Hello guys, and welcome to what you can probably tell is a slightly different video. Now, before we get into it, I have to apologise right now. It's 3 o'clock in the morning where I am, and it's really hot, so I'm probably going to be drinking a fair amount and my voice will probably sound awful at points, and I can't really fix it, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah. So what is this? Well, this is a suggestion video. So basically, I have written a suggestion for the Lord of the Rings mod, and this is me talking through that suggestion with you guys. This is going to be the first in a 3-part series where, as you can see, we're talking about Far Harad. So in this video, I'm going to cover the Taurethrim. I'm going to cover the Moorwife probably in 2 videos realistically, because I'm not quite finished with that suggestion, and it's something like 15,000 words long. And then a 3rd video on the half-trolls of Pitoragwaith. So this is basically a suggestion on how to overhaul a faction very close to my heart, the Taurethrim, who are obviously the faction I play on the official server, so they're pretty important to me. Yeah, and before I properly start, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone in the Taurethrim faction on the official server. So useful. They massively helped out here. They gave me loads of suggestions. One of them went through and basically edited everything, told me exactly how to make it all more readable. Went through, read the whole thing. It was really awesome. So I want to say a huge thank you to them in particular. Also, by the time I upload this video, you should be able to find this post on the forums. I will leave a link in the description. Basically, if you have a fandom account and you like the suggestion, please give it an upvote, because basically it means it's more likely for the mod team to read it. So I'm obviously not going to be reading this out word for word, because we'd be here all day. So I've already delayed enough. It's like 2.5 minutes into the video. Let's get into this. What is this suggestion? So this is a suggestion to overhaul the Taurethrim. I am not talking about anywhere else here, and I'm not at any point during these 3 videos going to be talking in detail about the Limwife, Simrim, and Black Numenorians of Far Harad. Those are 3 factions, for those who don't know, who have been confirmed to be coming in the future for Far Harad, and because of suggestion forum rules, basically you shouldn't go on about things that aren't in the game yet, and I think that's fair. So that means I'm not going to be talking about them because they're not in the game yet, so I can't judge how well the mod team are going to do it. Also, big fat disclaimer, the recipes, so I've suggested recipes and exact stats in here, and they're really rough. They're just to give a basic idea of what I'm going for. They're not meant to be perfectly balanced or exact, they're just an idea. So, the Taurethrim at the moment. So, obviously if you want to read this through word for word, you'll be able to find it on the forums post, which I'll put in the description. But, basically, yeah. Also, I forgot to mention it, I've scrolled past it, so, somewhere. Basically, the mod has its own lore thing called the Lost Chronicles, which currently only covers Far Harad, and lots of the lore in this is taken from that. So if you haven't read that, I'd suggest you do before you read through the suggestion. I'll explain everything and why it's important, but yeah. So I'm talking about the Taurethrim first for several reasons. First, because I play them, so I'm more familiar with them, but also because they're kind of, you know, if I look at a map of Far Harad, they're right in the middle, you know? So I think it makes sense to cover them first. So, Mumakil. Mumakil is another thing that the forum rules basically say don't tell us about Mumakil, and I think it's fair enough. I also think Mumakil shouldn't be all the Taurethrim are. The Taurethrim should be an interesting faction with Mumakil added on to the side of that. Like, if you're just making a faction that's cool because it's got the Mumakil, I think that's disappointing, because that ignores like the Aztec and the Mayan stuff this faction is based on, and all the cool stuff that's in there now. So I'm not going to talk about Mumakil in this video. Mumakil are not going to be in here. I think they'd be nice and a really key part of an overhauled Taurethrim, but I don't think you should absolutely need it. So this is the map of the Taurethrim that we're going to be looking at. As you can see, big jungle, massive jungle. Jungle here, and actually there's an area over here we're going to talk about, and an area here. So, three core parts to the overhaul, and this is true of all of my attempts. So, overhaul the core faction, then add sub-factions, and improve the map. So I'm starting with the core faction that I'm overhauling. So ruined. So this is what the Taurethrim are now, basically being overhauled, which are going to be in this area here. Right. So ruined variants. So every single building I'm suggesting, and all the ones in the game currently, should have a ruined variant, because the Taurethrim are a destroyed empire. And this should be across all the biomes they occupied, because they used to hold pretty much all of Far Harad up to, it's like up here on this map, the border between the two grassland types of the Moorwife. So giving them ruins everywhere means, if you're playing the Limwife or the Moorwife or any other faction around, you can have some really cool times messing around with that stuff, and if you're a Taurethrim, you can reclaim it all, which is cool. A smaller version of the pyramid, which is based more on the real ones, so it would have, if you've ever seen a pyramid from like Chichen Itza or something, one of the ones from Mexico, they've always got this weird box on the top, which you can, I'm doing one in real life, but you can't see it. It's actually there on the captain's building, but not on the pyramid. So I think that could be cool and make it not look exactly the same. And obviously a ball court, because Aztecs. Now, I wasn't actually the one who initially came up with it, but I've actually done quite a lot of research into Aztec ball pits since, and some of them are huge, like 123 meters long, or I'm guessing that's about 400 feet. It's huge. I'm not suggesting they're that big in game, obviously, but I think it could be really cool to have a ball court, because it would be a nice flavour building, like a bathhouse or something. So I think that could be cool. Taurethrim town is pretty simple. It's a town, but it's slightly different. So if you've seen any of the Easterling towns in game, it's like that, where you've got this series of plots all around the edge. Don't know why I keep doing actions in real life, I really don't. And then this one central plot that can be several things. So it's actually all built of plots, which randomly, so you've got decoration, so stuff like light, stuff like street lights, small gardens, small houses, etc. Small and medium plots, so in the small ones you'd have like various houses, in the medium ones you might have like a tavern or like shops and stuff. And in the centre, you've got a small pyramid, captain's building, orchard or garden, an exile shaman's hut, or even a ball pit. And every plot can be ruined. So, you might walk into a town and it's all pristine, and you might walk into a town and everything is destroyed. And depending on the sub-biome, depending on the biome and the sub-faction, that changes how ruined it is. The more destroyed factions would have more, like a higher chance to be ruined. So that's all the structures I'm suggesting for the core faction. So unless I explicitly state otherwise, all the other sub-factions have versions of these that are changed for their faction. So, troops. This is a problem. The Taurethrim don't have many troops because they don't have cavalry. Which I think makes sense, because if you're in a jungle environment, having a horse isn't helpful, because it means you get stuck more. So I don't want to suggest elephants or another rideable animal because I don't want them to have cav. I just don't. And, you know, make them more distinct. You know, like they've got the blowgunners instead of the archers. Well, I'm suggesting chosen warriors. So this gives them a pledge reward troop as well, which I think is always a good thing. I've focused heavily on the idea that the Taurethrim are really untrusting of strangers, and so there's a lot of focus on that. You've got a pledge element here, and I'm a fan of that, personally. So the Chosen Warriors are really... they're the elite troops, you know? So they can use blowguns and melee weapons, so that means they're both ranged and melee, so they're really useful, really versatile. In a way, cavalry isn't, so it gives them a very different strength. They've got golden armor, which is considerably more useful than standard armor, and just have a slightly higher hit pool. So that, I think the way it works in the mod currently is it's slightly varied. So like a soldier might have, I don't know, I am making these numbers up off the spot, but like 18 to 23 hit points or something. So these guys would have like 20 to 25 or something. You know. They'd be pretty rare to spawn naturally, but you could recruit them from a captain and get loads. So it's the expensive troop that you've got to have high alignment to have, and can be really, really useful in a battle. I'm also suggesting that we get golden armor craftable, because at the moment the current Taurethrim armor set is, I think, the third worst armor set in the game. The third worst faction armor set. Like, I think Moorwife is equal, and then Half Trolls are the only one that's worse. Half Trolls might be the same, actually, I can't remember, but there's like very, very few armors that are worse, and a lot of them that are better, and it really leaves them in a weak spot. Like, golden armor is a noticeable step up from being worse than most people to being about average, so I think it can really help. So crafting recipe's fairly simple. I'd like it to be a pledge one, so that you've got to be, you know, pledged to them to have the better armor, but again, I don't know if that would be possible. So that would massively help out with troops. And I think one of those important things is you can't have purely horde troops if you're in multiplayer, because a lot of servers limit the amount of troops you can have to prevent massive amounts of lag. But obviously that means if you're someone like the Taurethrim who don't have elite troops currently, you're at a massive disadvantage. Even if because you just can't field the same thing as like 10 dwarves or something. Yeah. So this is mostly the official server guys, so huge thank you to them again. So, yeah, Taurethrim weapons aren't great, doing the joint lowest damage of faction weapons, except for the Moorwife, who have a really weird set of faction damage. Like, some of their weapons are god-awful, and some of them are decent. It's really weird. With the exception of the blowgun. The blowgun is fairly useful. It's not incredible, but it's fairly useful, and it's pretty fun to use. So I'm also adding a bow, but we'll get to the bows later. So I quite like this idea of every weapon, the Taurethrim being able to poison every weapon. So every faction can poison their daggers. But I really like the idea of running around with like a poisoned pike. I think that would be really fun, and it would mean, you know, it's not just make them stronger stats-wise. You know, it's an asymmetrical thing that means they're good at like one thing that no one else is good at. And I really, really like that idea. So Cocoa and Jungle Remedy are something I'd never heard of, despite playing as a Taurethrim for a while now. I don't actually know exactly how long. But I'd never heard of them because they're really hard to get, because you need to buy them off a shaman. And basically they're both potions. Cocoa is a speed and strength buff, I think, and Jungle Remedy is like healing, as I remember. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're both potions that are very useful and a really nice faction boost, but are almost impossible to get because you have to buy them from a shaman. So I'm suggesting they add a Taurethrim barrel block, which is like a barrel, but you need high Taurethrim alignment to use it. And so this is my suggested crafting recipe, but those aren't really important. So you use cocoa to brew the cocoa, and a brand new fruit we'll talk about later for the jungle remedy. So you've got to, have been through all the Taurethrim stuff. And you can add more later, which could be fun. Maybe you need a separate one for weapon poisoning or something. I think it could be interesting. So, only 15 minutes into the video and we're on the sub-factions. I really don't want to split this one in two. This one's going to be long, isn't it? Anyway, so sub-factions are great. I love them. So, let's get straight into them. So, Chunha. So, yeah, quick lore breakdown. Chunha is a great lake that the forest people, which is one of the original tribes of man, inhabited until it flooded. So I'm basically suggesting that some people stayed there, because I think that fits logically. It's very, very different to all the other Taurethrim factions, because basically the Limwife and the Taurethrim are two factions. The Limwife are coming in the future and the Taurethrim are in the game now. They both come from this forest people, but the Taurethrim we have currently in the game aren't the Taurethrim who split off. Basically, they all got wiped out by the Moorwife several hundred years ago and are now just Moorwife claiming to be the Taurethrim. Yeah, it's weird, but basically these guys aren't very related to the Taurethrim and are much more like the Limwife. But basically it wouldn't make any sense for it to be a Limwife subfaction. The Taurethrim dominated the area. Ya'ash Ka, which is this waypoint right here in that grassland, was the old Taurethrim capital, and they controlled up to about here-ish, I think. If you're like assuming this map goes up to here. So I think there's no way they wouldn't have come to rule Chunha. And I think if like the mangroves where the Limwife would live are like over here, like it's just not practical to get from one to the other. And it breaks up the Moorwife, because the Limwife are also Sauron aligned, just like the Moorwife, unlike the Taurethrim. So I think putting them as a Taurethrim one is just better for gameplay reasons. So this is my terrible paint skills coming in. So I genuinely quite like the look of these biomes, but I also think it kind of sucks if you're adding a faction here. So these black lines I've drawn in are where I would move the swamp to. So this is the Far Harad swamp biome, and I'm basically suggesting it goes up to these black lines. I think that could be pretty cool to like go through the mountains that are, looming over the swamp, and, just make the area bigger. And Ya'ash Ka, the old Taurethrim capital, would be occupied by Taurethrim again. So that would be really, really cool. And Otok Ka, this area here that I'm suggesting becomes a new sub-faction later. Yeah, turns out you're running through far less Moorwife stuff to get there now, and that's really, really good, in my opinion. So basically, this is a faction split in two. So you got the Chunha locals and the Chunha Taurethrim. So the Chunha locals are the people who have always lived there. The Chunha natives, I've called them here. And the Chunha Taurethrim are basically people who have been Taurethrimized. Yeah. So the Chunha natives are cheap, bad troops. So they give Taurethrim troops 100 alignment, which is good. So, because at the moment the lowest one is at 200, so you actually have access to a troop before then, like everyone else. It's not very good, but you have access to troops. And at 150, you get the bow, the archer. So there's your first bow. And yeah, the Chunha Taurethrim, someone suggested to me that I just replace them with Taurethrim, standard Taurethrim warriors, and I think that might work, but I like the idea of having the Chunha ones, using their lines, using their models, and using their weapons. I think it's cool, but It absolutely wouldn't be necessary. And then you've got an archer with Taurethrim armor, which I think would be really cool and kind of makes the distinction worthwhile for me. And you've got obviously the banner bearer and a banner bearer. So you got the Chunha native and Taurethrim banner bearer. So makes sense lore-wise. You can get to the Taurethrim before the jungles, and it gets access before 200. And I like the ability to play Limwife and Taurethrim. Maybe that's just me. So obviously the inclusion is, because they're very similar to the Limwife, it's going to depend a lot on that. But this is just sort of my vague suggestion. So again, numbers, you know, very vague. Armor, really, really bad. Weapons, really, really bad. They're doing way less damage than the Taurethrim stuff. They've got slight speed and range, but they're not meant to be as good. And the bow's decent. It's really high damage, but it's not good range or speed. So it's decent, but it's not incredible. So Otok is special. Basically, Otok got rich off trade with the Númenóreans, because Toralond is which is the one you can see there, was settled by the Númenóreans, and that little waypoint next to that river is Otok. So they grew rich off the trade with the Númenóreans. So I want to try and make like a hybrid between Otok, between the Taurethrim and the Númenóreans, and I think that's really cool. So black lines here are a potential black Númenórean biome. I'm not talking about it in depth, but that's just sort of where they'd roughly be, because they've got to be based around Toralond. And then that blue line there is just where I'm putting the edges of the Otok biome. So you'd have that, and then some sort of jungle edge biome, and then back into the jungles. So the Otok biome itself is much less jungly than the jungle. Hopefully with some giant tree stumps and flatter, because, you know, it would have been cleared out better, and less pyramids because less human sacrifices. So again, not exact numbers bad, but this is a rough idea. It's considerably stronger than the original set. It's actually equal in protection to the normal one, but it's much higher durability and armor toughness, because armor toughness is a thing when this gets upgraded to reforged in 1.15. Armor toughness, for those who don't know, is basically armor doesn't actually work. Like, if I do 2 points of damage, then and you've got 2 points of armor, I do no points of damage. But if I do 9 points of damage and you have 2 points of armor, I don't actually do 7 points, because the higher the damage, the more of the armor it ignores completely. So this would have higher armor toughness, so it would be more durable if someone's putting out high damage. And an obsidian set, which is much better. Which is not perfect, but it's really quite good. You know, it's one that you can get to, like, as good as anyone else's. So it's not crazy off the levels amazing, but it's strong. More crafting recipes. The melee weapons are exactly the same, with slightly higher durability, because the Númenóreans would teach them better metallurgy, basically. But Otok, because of its inspiration from the Númenóreans, is much less guerrilla warfare. So, like, the Taurethrim, as they're designed, are good at fighting in jungles. These guys are more used to fighting in the open field, basically, so they're not going to poison as many weapons. So only daggers and swords, which is still more than most other factions. So they've got a blowgun and a bow. The blowgun is not very good. It's slow, it can't use poison, and so it's just not as good as any of the other blowguns, basically. But the bow is really quite fast. It's not. It's pretty good. It's really quite strong. And they have really elite troops besides the blowgunner. So the blowgunner's pretty bad. No armor, no poison. So that you've got more diverse, and you know that's 200 alignment. You can get that, and which is the cheapest blowgunner unit, I believe, alignment wise. It takes up to 350 alignment to get to the next one. You know, it's very distinct as the elite one. You know, and you've got pledge reward. All the chosen warriors are pledge rewards, obviously, and an Ottokar horseman. This is the only horseman you can get. This is your only cavalry. Obviously, they got it from Numenor, and it's the only mounted unit they have. And then you just got a banner bearer. So it makes the Taurethrim a more viable faction, especially in multiplayer, and just sort of makes them more interesting. So Kimenkar is the last sub-faction we're going to cover. Basically, Kimenkar is this ruined area called Taurethrim, where some Taurethrim set up base, and then the half-trolls came in and killed them all. So I'm not quite sure how to name it, because Kimenkar is the name of the city after it was destroyed. It's like City of Blood or something. So calling it Kimenkar sounds stupid to me. I'm using Akalan's people temporarily until there's a name for this city that I can find. Because Akalan is the person who went to Taurethrim originally. So that's what I'm going with there. So this map update's much smaller. It's literally just a road up to make the biome much more travelable through. You've got a waypoint down here, which is just south of the river, and one up in the northern forest, and one down in the southern forest. So yeah, that's pretty simple. The faction is really, really weird. So you don't have jungle remedies or coca because you can't get any of that stuff anymore. Weapons are poor durability because they've been patched up constantly, they're barely working. You know, they've been made to really functional, so they're doing much more damage, but they're really poor durability and they're slower. And obviously they can all have poison. They don't have a bow, but they've got a blowgun, which is much slower, but does way more damage. So it's actually, if you go by damage per second, much higher, which is the best one. So it's the best blowgun. Armor's pretty similar, except obviously low durability. And the troops are really cool. These are the reason I want this faction, basically. So Akalan warriors are just Taurethrim warriors with the armor and weapons, and have a slightly higher hit pool. That's it. Blowgunner, you know, just the same. Akalan chosen warrior, more of the same. But the Akalan gorilla is different. There's another pledge reward, and it's a blowgunner, but it can hide like the rangers, so the AI can't see it, which gives them an interesting ability. It massively broadens what the Taurethrim can do, and I just really, really like it, and it's basically the reason I want this faction in the game. So yeah, that's kind of it for them. And then Mumakar I was going to write out a sub-faction for Mumakar, but then I decided not to, because basically it was a bad idea. Mumakar shouldn't exist, and I go into detail here as to why it shouldn't. But I am suggesting a map change, which is this black line becomes a different jungle biome, Jungle's Edge. I'd also suggest a wider biome around the edge of it, which is like Jungle's Heart Edge or something. So no NPCs or scorpions at all. and the undergrowth is less prevalent. So you've got this really, basically the jungle's heart edge will be a really, really thick jungle that's really hard to get through around it. And then you get to this area, and it's got massive giant trees, and all the trees that are in the biome can become giant trees. At the moment, I think only jungle and mahogany can, but here you get massive mango trees, massive banana trees, etc. And it would be a really cool biome to go around, but the canopy would be massive, and they're very, very rare ruins here. And there'd be a new fruit tree in the jungle's heart, which can be used to make jungle remedies. And it's obviously a new wood, so that's cool. I'd also like it to appear in the jungle heart's edge biome, which I've temporarily named Jungle Darkness. And yeah, that's it. So that is it for my Taurethrim overhaul. If you did like it, please comment down below with your suggestions for it, but also go to the forum page and give it an upvote and comment on it there if you have something to add. So yeah, that's it. The first of 3. The More Wife Part 1 will be out at some point. I'll see you guys soon. Bye!